Conor McGregor's barrister, he asked the jury to come to a verdict based on the evidence and not on the basis that they may not like his client.
Yes, indeed. So Rami Farrell said that they may have a negative view of his client. They may even loathe him. They may be unimpressed with some things he said in the witness box. But he said he wasn't asking them to ask him to Sunday lunch. He was asking them to look at the evidence and consider whether on the balance of probabilities he assaulted Nikita Hand. Now, he asked them to consider what he said were the sheer number of lies she told and whether her inconsistencies were confusion or pure fantasy, suggesting that she only became distressed as soon as she knew she had to go home and face the music. He asked them to consider whether it's probable that someone remembers being raped but doesn't remember the facts surrounding it that don't corroborate it, and whether if it was anybody else other than Conor McGregor on trial would the door in the jury room even hit them on the backside before they were back out to dismiss this case. While James Lawrence's senior counsel John Fitzgerald also asked the jury to dismiss the case against his client, who claims that he and Nikita Hand had consensual sex, saying it was a bizarre case as to find for Ms. Hand they had to believe that they had sex but that she didn't consent. However, Ms. Hand herself doesn't believe that the two of them had sex and instead says there was some form of conspiracy, but he asked them why his client would make up the story and put himself in the frame.
And on the Nikita Hand side, Nicole, can you take us through the closing statement on her behalf?
Yes, indeed. So John Gordon suggested that Mr. McGregor was actually the one who was the liar here. He suggested he was a devious coward who doesn't have the decency to own up to what he did, which he said was savage. And he said that he tried to reinvent his defence, but his mask slipped during his evidence. He lost his temper and there was a stream of invective directed towards his client, asking them to consider what that tells them and saying, thank goodness they have the common sense to realise they're being sold a pup by a very arrogant man. He said they could assume that Mr. McGregor and Mr. Lawrence were in cahoots from the get-go, and they were trying to confuse the narrative and make his client out to be an even bigger hussy than they said that she was. He said, of course, Ms. Hand's account was all over the place, but he said some elements never changed, and there was uncontroverted expert evidence that she suffered a very violent incident. Now, Mr. Gordon said there was no magic wand here, but he asked them to vindicate and compensate Ms. Hand, saying it would be a huge step for her, though he said it wouldn't change what happened. She will live with it for the rest of her days, and she will always be a marked woman because she stood up to Conor McGregor. Now, Mr. Justice Alex Owens has begun charging the jury in the past hour. He's left it there for the day. He will continue his charge to the jury tomorrow morning.